Your Light Fridays, where I sit down with woke folk providers and we talk about modalities and tools and tips to keep you shining bright. A little sweaty, so I'm a little sticky. I'm going to sit like this. So I'm sitting down. I don't know why this took me so long to get this guy in this chair next to me, because he's one of the only people that I hang out with. Ani Manian is here with me. He is one of my besties. He's me and Ken's bestie. Him and his lovely other half, Lee, are probably one of the only couples that we hang out with very consistently, because we met each other, our eyes locked. Actually, Ken and Ani's eyes locked.
Right here.
And right here in Illuma, and the rest was history. So Ani, why don't you do a brief introduction of yourself, and then we'll kind of deep dive into your weirdness.
Let's do it. So I'm Ani. I am officially, I guess, what I like to call myself is a human potential and performance coach. I'm also a psychedelic somatic interactional psychotherapist, as well as a whole bunch of other things. But I'm basically here on the planet to help people eliminate the suffering that they experience on a moment-by-moment basis, emotional, mental, psychological suffering, and actually create their reality, not the one that they were conditioned to operate in, but the one that they choose to be in, to actually have what they want and to feel good as much of the time as possible, which I believe is the only job we have.
Yes.
Just feel good.
Yes. Well, I'm going to do a brief backstory on us, because I think it's an awesome story. So, December of 19, we had an event here at Illuma, which was the Christina Wise event, who's also one of our good friends. And she had an event here at Illuma, and who did you know?
Christina.
Oh, that's who invited you.
It.
Oh, Danielle.
Danielle
Yeah. And Christina.
Yeah.
So they were like, oh, our friends are coming in from New York.
That morning.
Yeah, that day. They're on their way here. They're going to come by. They're about to vagabond across the globe for 2020. We all know now that didn't happen. But then we did not know. And they literally walked in. And I'm not kidding, like, it really was like this hilariously kismet, hilarious situation where Ani and Ken somehow, like, locked eyes, and they were standing at this window downloading each other, like, real intensely.
We were the same person in different bodies.
Exactly. They do have a very similar backstory, so I think there was some connection there. And then I met Lee, and I was like, yes, another bad bitch doing awesome stuff. And they're like, well, we're not going to be here for long, so we can be your friends for like a month. But then COVID happened, which one of the very big positives for us was that Ani and Lee got trapped in Austin. Not really part of their plan. But it turned out into like a really awesome thing, and they really are our closest friends and our soul people. And the other thing that, because I know a lot of our Illuma patients watch this, Ani is the voice that you listen to before you start your ketamine infusion, because he's the one that created and recorded our guided meditations, and everybody's obsessed with them, and they all ask for the link after they listen to them, and everybody listens to them at home.
Aw, that makes me so happy.
So I just wanted to give that backstory because I thought that was fun.
Well, you guys are the reason why we stayed and why we're still here. So.
Yes. Love them. So I think there's just so much to unpack with us, because we've had a ton of really deep conversations on and off of psychedelics. And have done a lot of work together just as friends. But I think one of the things that I find the most interesting of how you work with people is your mindset and philosophy around why people suffer and why they're suffering. And I would love for you to kind of unpack that for people, of how you think of that, because you think of that in a different way than any person that I've ever met in my whole life. And it's really it's a big difference in perspective, in that there's a shift that can occur immediately, which most people don't believe in.
Yeah, so I believe in a concept that you can think of as innate mental health. And we can even generalize this to innate health. You know, I think there is a natural intelligence to everything, right? The intelligence that turns acorns into oak trees, the intelligence that makes the wind blow and the sunshine and, you know, the grass grow, and how we start off as a cell, pretty
Literally.
much, literally, and we turn into this body, right? And there's a design, there's a kindness to nature's design that is so inherently perfect. And when we work in accordance to that design, we experience health.
Yes.
We experience vibrance, we thrive, we feel really good, we are in a state of creation. And to contrast that state of creation, typically any human being will experience one of two states. We can group all the substates into. We're either in a state of threat or stress or survival, or we're thriving, we're healthy, we're creating, and we're expanding, right? So there's this duality that all of the universe exists in, the yin and the yang, expansion, contraction. And so when we work in accordance to our design, then we thrive, we feel really good, and we enjoy life, right? We enjoy every moment. And when we don't, then we contract, right? And we experience that contraction in the body as tightness, tension. We experience that contraction in the mind as stress, anxiety, fear, doubt, overwhelm. We experience it as negative thoughts. And pretty much, you know, everything that is experienced as some sort of psychological, mental, emotional suffering is actually a fabrication. It's entirely self-created. But it's not self-created in a way that, you know, we're doing it intentionally. It's actually the exact opposite. We're innocently subjecting ourselves to this suffering. And so the way we can think about this is that when we experience an event that doesn't feel good in our body, right? We slip and fall, we hurt ourselves, you know, or a parent yells at us for something, you know, we bomb a test and it feels really shitty. In that moment, when we're experiencing that event, we may experience pain of some sort. It could be physical pain, mental pain, emotional pain. But the residue, the imprint that leaves on us, that we continue to carry, you know, we call that trauma, we can call that many things, but that is what creates this impingement in our baseline state of innate health. And the longer we carry that, the more we experience the suffering that brings with it. And our natural state is to be healthy, our natural state is to be well, but for our tendency to hold on to things that disrupt the flow of energy. Because everything in the universe is designed to flow, right? We can't hold on to anything. We can't hold on to even a single breath, because the breath goes in, the breath goes out. We can't hold on to food, the food goes in, the food goes out. And so we are meant to be channels. We're meant to be this pipe through which life energy flows through in all these different forms. Same with money even. When we hold on to things, then that creates stagnation. I mean, there's all of Oriental medicine. Jenna, who also works out of this space, like her entire body of work is based on this idea that the blockage in the flow is what creates the problem. So whenever we experience a less than favorable experience of life, it's because we're holding on to something, and that is entirely our creation. It's entirely up to us. And the natural tendency of everything in the universe is to allow the restoration of flow. So when we restore that flow, the body, the mind, the being returns to its beautiful natural state of well-being, which is our birthright. It is who we are. It is what is underneath all of this fabricated construction of suffering that we are creating innocently.
And that's something that we've really touched on, is like in some of our talks that I'm in concurrence with, is that healing is just an act of remembrance. It's actually an act of subtraction. It's
Yes,
pulling
yes,
things
yes,
away.
yes.
Whereas most people are under this illusion that it's packing things on. Well, if you just did this and you did this and you did this and you did this,
right.
then you will be better.
Right.
And really,
Yeah.
what we have both shared a belief in is really it is unpacking everything, all these layers that get gooped on you over years of living life.
And that's, even intuitively, that makes so much sense to me. It feels good that for me to be well, I'm not missing anything.
Yeah.
That there's nothing that's hollow or empty in me
Broken.
that needs to be fixed, right? And when we operate out of this paradigm that something is broken, something needs fixing, then I'm going to keep finding things that are broken, keep finding things to fix. When I'm holding a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Exactly.
But when we start from this place of inherent perfection, that I'm perfect, but for some things that I might be holding on to and carrying, and if I can subtract those things, I can come back to this place of they're called fundamental well-being, because it's fundamental, it's who we are. So it just even feels good to consider that as a perspective. And this goes along with another thing that I think about a lot, which is there is zero distance between where we are and where we want to be.
This is the hard one for many. Mostly my partner. We had a very intense conversation about this, so let's explain that deeper.
Yeah, because we want to make everything a process. We want to put what we want far away from us.
Yeah.
We want to create distance. We
Work.
want to create separation. Work.
You got to earn it.
I got to earn it. I got to do something, right? I have to achieve it. I have to expend some effort, some time, because I can't have it right now. And if I do those things, then I will have earned the right. I would have done the work, because there needs to be some sort of exchange. And that's one of the ways we fundamentally create separation throughout life. Separation between us and ourselves, separation between us and our romantic partners and friends, separation between us and the things we want to have, the experience of life we want to have, the feelings we want to feel, because we make it contingent, dependent on something else. When I make the money, then I can be happy.
Yeah.
When I get the partner, then I can feel loved. When I buy the house, then I can feel safe. But what we find is we get to that place, and then we find something else, another way to put it further away from us. So the way I like to think about this is that the experience of life that we want to have is available to us right here, right now, and this is where it gets really juicy. It's only available to us right here, right now, because it's only in the now that we actually have the power to choose. Choice only exists right now. We can't experience choice in the past because it's done. We can't experience choice in the future because it hasn't happened, which means the only time that I get to feel the way I want to feel is right here, right now, because when the future comes a year from now, if I've made it, a process that's going to take me a year, at that moment, it's going to feel like now. It's not going to feel like the future.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to find another subtle way to push it away from me. So this moment right now is the only moment that you can be free. This moment is the only moment that you can be well. This moment is the only moment you can be happy. And if you say that I need ... for me to be happy, for me to feel safe, for me to feel loved, for me to feel enough, that moment will never come.
Yeah. I'm not going to kick back on that because I actually am in full concurrence with that. What I do find is so this act of getting back into flow, though, is a practice that people need to learn.
Yeah.
So I would say, would you call that a practice or a process? I mean, it's something you have to be. Most people going about their day-to-day life in the American have never heard the words that you just said, and so obviously they have to learn how to do that.
Yeah.
Right. So isn't that a process, though?
Yeah. So the way I would describe this, and what I'm finding with my work, that I keep coming back to this idea that everything is a paradox. That our ability to be happy and to thrive is completely dependent on our ability to hold a paradox. So paradox is two opposing ideas, right? So for us to, we need to be able to attuned to this idea that it's not a process, it's only in the now, we can have it right here, right now. We can't create separation, and we have to be able to hold the idea simultaneously that for me to get there, I have to go through a process.
Mm-hmm.
And that process might be the process of, emotionally digesting undigested experiences that were traumatic for me at the age of 6. And because I'm carrying those in my system, as long as I'm carrying those in my system, I can't be free, I can't restore flow. And therefore, once I get there, then I can have this right here, right now.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it's that paradox that I do need to do some work, but it's where I do the work from. It's not what we do, it's where we do that work from.
Yeah.
So if I do the work from that, hey, I'm going to keep being on this path and one day I'm going to get there, I'm never going to get there.
Mm-hmm.
But if I do the work from the place that I can have this anytime I want, and I can only have it right now, so what do I need to do to get myself into that state?
Yeah. So
Then-
that's possible.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm in love with this man. He's one of my favorite humans.
Mm.
And I've seen it work with multiple clients of ours that we share, that one of the things that is a shared experience by many people that walk through the door at Illuma is they have been stuck in a paradigm mind shift for years, if not decades, many times multiple decades, many times most of their lives. And that is all about narrative identity, which is something that I love your take on it, which is the story that you're living your life through.
Yeah.
And a lot of people who walk through this door have a story of, I'm depressed, I've always been depressed, I'm anxious, I have trauma, I'm broken, I'm this, I'm that, I don't really deserve to be happy. I mean, there's a lot wrapped up in there, but a lot of us carry around these, false identities and narratives of ourselves that make it actually impossible to get to the space that Ani is talking about unless we're really ready to own them, number one, bring awareness to them, and then to let them go.
Yeah.
And so I would love for you to kind of explain narrative identity in your own words, and then how do you work with people to unravel that? Because I find that practice really awesome.
So, okay, who you are is 100% based on who you think you are, right? So if I ask you, who are you? You might, share your name, you might share where you live, you might share your age, you might share all these attributes about yourself. You might say that I love cars, or I'm really bad at math, or I love playing soccer. And you're going to describe all these things. And maybe you'll talk about, your childhood. Maybe you'll talk about how, you wanted to be an accountant growing up, and because your math teacher told you that you suck at math and you got a D, it made you feel some emotions, and that emotional discomfort made you avoid anything mathematical, and you went into theater, musical theater, and you've spent your entire life pursuing the arts almost as a way to avoid mathematics. So this entire identity that comes up when you think of who you are is a complete fabrication. It's a construction, right? It is made up. And initially, it was made up for you. From the age of 0 to 7, as you were growing up, you were imprinting everything that you were experiencing in your environment directly into your subconscious mind. And you were forming this sense of self. Because as a baby, you were pure experience. You were purely embodied. There was no me, there's no sense of self, and there's no other, right? You started developing this sense of baby and mommy, baby and daddy, baby and this other person, right? And so as we're growing older, we're forming the sense of self, and the sense of self is being formed thanks to our primary caregivers, our parents, people who are taking care of us, grandparents, nannies, and it's being formed in opposition to their perspective about us and from their perspective about us. And we're internalizing who we are based on how they treat us. So a baby that doesn't get picked up when it's crying, when it's hungry, is going to have a certain sense of self that it's creating, that it's going to carry and associate into its entire life. So at age 60, we're still going to be living from the template that was formed at 6 months old. And so our sense of self develops as a reaction to the experiences we have as we're growing up. So 0 to 7, our brainwave state primarily is the theta brainwave state, which is a state of hypnosis. We're imprinting everything, we're forming our sense of self, and then, typically until the age of 10, 11, we're highly dependent. It's the first phase of our life. Then we go into this state of independence. We're pushing away from parents, we're pushing away from authority figures, we start rebelling, and we're forming ourselves in opposition to these forces that are trying to control us. And then eventually at some point when we get older, we enter into the stage of interdependence. We create romantic partnerships, we coexist, right? But our entire sense of self is being fabricated as we go. And we internalize these beliefs, we internalize these stories about who we are, and we carry them as if they're truth, right? And this just becomes who we are. It doesn't appear as a story, it doesn't appear as a belief, it just appears as fact, as who we are. We take it to be real, and then we carry that for the rest of our life until someone shows us otherwise. The bottom line is pretty much everything you believe in general, but especially about yourself, is completely made up. There's only 3 things that are true, objectively true. And I'll tell you what they are. 1 is that you exist. You can't argue with the fact that you exist, right? If we're talking about absolute truth, it has to be 100% true 100% of the time. So can you argue with the fact that you exist? If you're watching this, listening to this, you can't. So you exist. Second, you are aware. So there's some part of you that knows that you are aware. You're conscious, right? You can't argue with that. So that's another absolute truth. That's the second one. The third one is that you experience. You experience smell, you experience taste, you experience sight, you experience touch, you experience feelings, you experience thoughts. You can't argue with the fact that you experience things, right? Now, these 3 things are the only things that are objectively true. Pretty much everything else, you will find if you inquire deep enough that it's not 100% true 100% of the time. For example, I can say that my partner was mean to me this morning, right? Now that is an opinion, it's a belief. But is it 100% true 100% of the time? Will she think that she was mean to me? No. She'll think that she was just being direct, and she was actually being kind to me because she was pointing something out. Now the fact that I internalize that as being mean, being rude, is entirely my subjective perspective. It's an opinion, it's a belief. You will find that pretty much everything you believe about yourself is not an absolute truth. It's a subjective perspective. And a lot of the things that you believe about yourself are not very nice things to believe about yourself. They're actually quite mean. If you talk to another human being the way you talk to yourself, the way you treat yourself, they would not hang out with you. They would not want to be with you. They would not, feel very good about you. But we are incredibly mean to ourselves. We're incredibly judgmental about ourselves. We beat ourselves up. We're very critical of ourselves. We punish ourselves. Thankfully, our parents were there to instill and imprint all these ways of being. That's how they conditioned us, that's why we treat ourselves the exact same way. We picked up the stick where they left off.
Mm-hmm.
So all these things we believe about ourselves that forms our narrative identity, because we think in terms of stories. The subconscious mind, references everything in a story, and it internalizes the characters in a story. So there's 4 major roles: perpetrator, victim, bystander, and hero, that we're internalizing in emotionally intense experiences, particularly traumatic experiences. So we're We have all these characters, we're creating this movie where we're the star, and there's all these people in our movie, right? And the story is evolving, and we end up living out this made up narrative identity, most of which is very painful. So the challenge with there's nothing wrong with having a narrative identity, but the problem is we're writing really sad movies. We're writing like really violent movies.
Yeah.
And usually we're the ones losing.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we continue to believe in this fabricated sense of self, we continue to suffer. So the reason why all this is important is that when we can start to question all these things we believe about ourselves, do you know if, you might have an opinion that you are, this is a real one that I worked on with someone. This person legitimately believed that they're very unattractive, that they're ugly.
Mm-hmm.
And we had an entire session where we're like, how do you know that this is true? Like, can you be absolutely sure that this is true?
Yeah.
Is there one person on the planet who would disagree with this? Right?
Yeah.
And so, because if we're taking something as fact, it has to be absolute.
Yeah.
And so when we start questioning all these beliefs we have about ourselves, we start creating space, because suddenly it's like, wait, what if this is actually not true? And that's a possibility we've never entertained.
Yeah.
For this person, the fact that they might actually be attractive is not a thought they've ever had.
Mm-hmm.
It's a reality that they've never experienced. They've never experienced reality in which they're attractive.
Yeah.
They've never experienced another person. They've never experienced reality where they're smart, where they're rich, where they're healthy or happy. And so this changes everything, because once you open up, even for 1 second, if you allow yourself to experience a reality which is the opposite of this painful reality, this painful story that you've been repeating to yourself your entire life, something magical happens. A space opens up. Because as soon as you open the possibility, then you make it real, right? As soon as you interrupt that thought and you replace it with a thought that feels good, and there's always a better feeling thought available to you, then something opens up, and now you can add energy using your attention. The more attention you put on something, the more you energize it. The more you energize that possibility that you might actually be incredibly good looking, that you smell extremely nice, that you feel you're an extremely happy person, or whatever it might be, the more you energize it, where attention goes, energy flows. And where attention goes, energy flows, you're actually wiring those neural synapses together. You're creating new neural networks. And as you create new neural networks, you're creating these highways, and over time, super highways, for those positive thoughts. And suddenly, those are the thoughts that you begin to have. And as you do this, you're literally changing the narrative of who you are. You're changing your sense of self. And as you realize that you can actually change who you are, you can change your physical reality, you can change the physical structure of your brain, because the way the structure of your brain was formed was with these thoughts and feelings. And you can have these new thoughts and feelings to create a new reality. You realize that you can actually step into the driver's seat of your life, and you can be the author of your reality. You can create your reality by design. You can choose who you want to be. You can choose how you want to live. You can choose how you want to feel. That you don't have to be a victim. You can be a creator.
Mm. And that's where the freedom is.
And that's where freedom is.
Yeah.
Because the ultimate freedom is freedom from our own thoughts. Freedom from this identity that was foisted on us.
Mm-hmm.
Freedom from the suffering we're creating for ourselves. Freedom from this prison that we've constructed, that we live in, that we take as how it is.
Yeah. I told you this was going to be a good one, guys. So, okay, so now we've brought in the possibility that maybe our reality is not what we think it is. We've started to consider that we can just let go of stuff and become free in the now and experience whatever we want to experience in the now. So what are some other tools do you think that are helpful in kind of guiding this process?
So let's talk about stress.
Yeah.
Right? Which is, if we think about a two-state model,
Yeah.
right? We're either in a state of stress, we're either contracted, we're either like, "Ugh,"
Yeah.
lots of pressure, right? Lots of tension. We're afraid, we're, gripping the steering wheel hard. Or we're nice and relaxed and loose and expansive and we feel positive and joyful and happy and we're excited about the future and we're curious and we're in a sense of wonder and play. The easiest way to move from the state of stress that most people live in most of the time. So, just so you know, we're wired to experience about 30 minutes of stress every 3 days.
Oh, so we're right on track.
Right. So just look at your life, right? And just notice how much time you spend in stress.
Yeah.
Right? And so if you want to, the easiest way to move from stress, survival, tension, to freedom, to joy, to play, to expansion, is to find a state of allowing. Because when we resist, we create stress. When we resist, we block the flow, we go out of flow and into contraction. So any time we are offering resistance to the world, and this could be that the current president should not be president. It could be that COVID should not be happening. It should be that this place should not require a mask. It could be that I should have 10 times more money in my bank account. It could be that my partner needs to be different. They need to be this way. It could be that, I should be feeling this other way. It could be that it should not be raining. If you think about how much we resist reality, that's clinically insane, right? Because the only person who loses is us.
Yeah.
Anytime we resist, we suffer. So the root of suffering, the root of stress, the root of dis-ease, because ease is just being relaxed. Dis-ease is resistance, right? Resistance is the root of pretty much all our suffering, right? So to move into a more positive, expansive creation paradigm where we feel good, we have to dissolve the resistance. And we dissolve the resistance by offering an unconditional yes to what is here with me, right? So if I'll give you a practical example, right? If you want to lose weight and be fit, you can either beat yourself up mercilessly for how you look right now, put yourself in a state of stress. That state of stress will make your body hold on to fat. It'll produce more cortisol. It'll make your adrenals go haywire. It'll make you tense up, and then you will stress eat because you're feeling really shitty and you want to numb these feelings of discomfort, and you will pretty much stack the deck against yourself to lose the weight and to be fit. Or you can start appreciating yourself. You can start loving yourself. You can start accepting the way your body is right now. You can offer an unconditional yes to who you are and how you are right now. And as you do that, you find that you just start to open up. You start to relax. There's less pressure. There's less tension. There's less strain. And in this state, you don't need to stress eat. Your body is actually in a state of ease, which means it's metabolizing food properly. It's storing less fat. And you have more energy because you're not spending all this energy contracting around how shitty you feel and look. And so you actually are like, wow, it's a beautiful day. Maybe I'll go for a walk. Maybe I'll go for a run. And you find that it's so much easier, more enjoyable and fun to get to the physical state that you want to get to. And the journey itself is enjoyable. So when we make things a means to an end, and we create desire, which is a contract to be unhappy until we get what we ask for, we're damning ourselves to suffer, right? That is another way we resist. We're saying almost, a kind of fuck you to the moment right now, to what's real right now. And so that is probably one of the most profound things we can do as human beings, which is to offer this space of openness, because that's actually what we are. Who you are, most people identify themselves as the objects that they're aware of, right? An object is a thought, an object is an emotion. We say, I am hungry. We say, I am fat. We say, I am angry. We're not the emotion of anger. We are what is aware of the emotion of anger. We're not depressed. We are the awareness of the depression. We're not anxious. We're the awareness behind the anxiety. So when we identify as the objects in our consciousness, we get lost in them, we get identified in them, and we lose contact with reality. But when we recognize that we are actually the space through these thoughts, these emotions, these feelings, these physical sensations, these perceptions, these stories, this experience flows through, then we realize that we can't hold on to anything because everything is impermanent, everything is transient, and we can just be the space. And what the space does, think about a pipe, a garden hose that's allowing water to flow through. It's not holding the water, it's not holding on to the water, it's not resisting the water. It's just being the space through which it flows. And when we allow ourselves to be the space through which life flows, life force energy, money, love, food, breath, sound, everything, then we find that we are in the most optimal peak state that we can be in.
I love that. And I think one of the biggest things, though, currently in our society, we're programmed that stress is actually the force behind you that makes you do the things that you don't want to do. Because without that, you'll be a sad lump on the couch that won't do anything. Because if you didn't have stress, like, you would just be lazy and lay on your ass all day.
And I remember...
And anxiety.
Yeah.
Those are the two.
I remember the first day we met, you talked about your experience with ketamine and how it changed your life. And you said, something I still remember, you said, and it felt like I had lost my edge.
Yes, and that is a conversation I have with a lot of people.
Right? Because this edge that we think we've lost...
that we've been taught to believe is what's holding us together.
Bingo. Because I had a conversation with a friend, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's a partner at a law firm. Mm-hmm. And we were talking about, some of these things. And I told him, like, let's create the kind of internal experience that you want. He's like, no, I can't do that, because if I am not stressed and anxious all the time, I won't be able to get anything done.
Yeah, that's a real belief.
It's a real belief.
For a lot of very successful people.
Right.
Yes.
And that's so sad, because that's what we've reduced our life to.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And we think that that's when we are most optimal.
Yes.
But the mind is not designed to function optimally in a state of stress. The body is not designed to function optimally in a state of stress. If you look at every single metric, physiologically, neurologically, biologically, mentally, psychologically, we get worse. Our performance drops
in every way.
In every way. Like, the chemicals that are released, what the body experiences in a state of stress is absolutely insane. We're not digesting food properly. All the blood is going to our extremities to allow us to fight or flight or freeze. We're in a global state of heightened activation, right? And our adrenals are hyperactive. We're producing cortisol. Our entire body changes for us to survive. And living in survival is basically slowly dying.
Mm-hmm.
And hacking our body with more caffeine, more uppers, more stimulants, more notifications, more pressure to make us go, results in only one thing that's guaranteed, which is a crash. Mm-hmm. Because anything that goes up must come down. Mm-hmm. And so most people who are in this heightened state of stress, this extended state of activation, over time, they find that they have some sort of a crash. They either have a health crash, or they are so fatigued that they can't get out of bed. My partner Lee, she went through a breakup, didn't have the resources to feel the pain, basically dissociated by working out like crazy. Mm-hmm. She'd go to classes, then work out more, and then work, and then go. She woke up with half her face paralyzed.
Yeah, Bell's palsy.
Mm-hmm. And this has become more common. I have another friend.
Yeah, our other friend had it.
And so it's crazy because, like, that's how
because your body's screaming at you and you've decided not to listen. And so it finally does something that says, oh, you want to listen now? I used to say this hilarious thing, like I think that everybody gets, that the universe is at first like, hey.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then it's like, hey. And then it's like, hey. And then it finally picks up a sledgehammer and knocks you across the head.
Yeah.
And your goal is to, can you listen when it's doing this before it hits you in the head with the sledgehammer? But most people need to be hit in the head with the sledgehammer a few times before they're like, oh.
Dude, this is what happened with my dad, right?
Yeah.
I saw him be in a stress response my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
And he retired and he developed liver cirrhosis.
Mm-hmm.
And in 4 years he was dead.
Yeah.
Because he just wouldn't listen to his body, and he kept dissociating with alcohol and with cigarettes and with food and with work.
Yeah.
Right, which are our favorite things to numb our emotions with.
Yeah.
And eventually, at the ripe age of 64, he died.
Yeah.
And that's one of the big reasons why I do what I do now, because I saw him die because he didn't love himself enough.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what self-love is to me, which is like, can we hold space for our emotions? Can we give ourselves the compassion, the empathy, the space to feel? Can we allow ourselves to be in the experience without dissociating, without numbing, without repressing?
Yeah.
Like, that's the most basic kind of self-love. Can we be here for ourselves? Can we accept ourselves? He spent his whole life running away from himself, and eventually his body was like, okay,
I guess we're done here.
Yeah, I guess we're done here. We don't need to be here.
Yeah.
Like, if we tell ourselves, our body, enough times that we don't deserve to have this or be that or feel this, eventually it'll listen.
Yeah.
And there's actually, have you heard of German New Medicine?
Mm-mm.
Oh, dude, this is incredible.
Wait, this is what Ryan Freisinger does.
Does it?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So
Explain
this
it.
guy called Dr. Hammer. I'm assuming he's German, which is why I
Hammer.
pronounce his name in a German accent. My accent,
He does voices. That's his side job.
No, I only have one voice, which is either a German or a Russian. They all sound the same. So anyway, this is called German New Medicine, and he basically found that all physical illness, all physical disease, is caused by what he calls self-conflict. Some sort of conflict we create within ourselves in terms of you're not good enough, which is a belief we internalize from trauma that we experience. This guy has mapped every single disease to a part of the brain where that belief is held, the part of the body that's affected, and the psychological condition that must be true for that to exist.
Wow.
So it's basically creating physical healing by resolving emotional conflicts and self-conflicts in our psychology.
Wow.
Absolutely mind-blowing.
That's interesting.
And they're proving that our physical body literally, physically responds to our emotional, psychological, mental experience.
Yeah.
And, they're not separate. Our body and mind are not separate. And so we can't do this fragmented approach to, here, take this pill and you will
Fix
feel better.
Fix this thing. Yeah.
So coming back to, what we started, I believe that there's a homeostatic response. Homeostatic basically means that the body seeks to return to equilibrium. When you have a cut, do you need to do anything to heal it? No. The body knows what to do to return to baseline. That same thing exists in our mind, in our psychology. And if we can allow that process to unfold, which is, I think, why the work that you guys do at Illuma is so pivotal, because you're creating a space where someone can come in and they can allow their experience to fully be here, to flow through. And in that process, they restore flow, they restore wellness. They stimulate this homeostatic response for the body to come back to its equilibrium.
Yeah. Which is all about connection to self.
Exactly.
That's all the work we do. People ask what we do. All I do is create a space to reconnect you with yourself. And in that state, you can heal yourself. And then I empower you and do this. And then we work with integration coaches like Ani to help you walk through that process, to relearn how to be.
Who you are is not the name that you go by. It's not the experiences you've had. It's not whatever story you tell yourself about who you are. You are just the experience of love anything and everything else is just a misunderstanding. And I'm going to make this tangible, right? Because we talk about this, you know, in spiritual ways, we talk about this in metaphysical ways, in philosophical ways. I'm not saying any of those things. I'm saying this is literal, observable, empirical fact, because who you are is the space in which your experience appears and flows through, right? Your breath, your physical sensations, your thoughts, your feelings, your perceptions, that space that you are offers an unconditional yes to whatever flows through it. It doesn't resist in its true nature, in its fundamental essence. And that's what love is. Love is just complete and utter unconditional acceptance. That's what the state of harmony is. That's what you are. When you are in your true nature, when you're in the state of allowing, when you're in the state of acceptance, when you're in the state of being receptive and not resisting the flow of energy through you, you thrive. You experience wellness. You are happy. You're joyful. You're present. You experience the richness of life. So your true nature is love. And to me, love is just an unconditional yes to what is. And when we offer that unconditional yes, we thrive. And I really think that the place where we need to offer the most unconditional yes is to ourselves.
Oh, completely.
Because we're so mean to ourselves. I was so mean to myself for so long.
Oh, God, that was horrible.
Like, so, I mean, it's just...
It was ugly.
It makes me sad to even think about it.
Oh, I actually have cried multiple times, usually under psychedelics, thinking about the damn... You know, I've said this before, but I had this amazing EMDR experience where that was actually very psychedelic, and the visual was of a puppy hiding. Do you remember the story?
Yeah.
A puppy hiding in a cave, and I was trying to get it to come out, and then I figured out that puppy was me as a little girl or as a child or whoever, my, you know, little self. And then I had beat it so bad that it was terrified of me. And it was this reality that I am the biggest abuser I've ever had on myself, that I am actually the victim of myself. And it really was like this aha moment of like, and trying to get her to trust me again. And that's what I was doing in that process, because that I was trying to reconnect with myself, but I had been so harsh to my, my vulnerable self that they did not feel safe with me, which was just this, it really was a light bulb moment of awareness of what I'd done after decades of that abuse.
Yeah.
I mean, it was abuse. And it's something that I talk to people a lot about, which is like, you know, you want to play victim with everybody else, but if you acted, like you said earlier, to somebody else or a kid, the way you treat yourself, you would be in jail. And so this dichotomy that you're going to judge this person for how they've acted towards you, and then you're not really going to own how you've acted towards yourself, is a really hard thing for people to reconcile with, really. But it's the only way you do the work.
I mean, I love this question when working with someone and they're talking about how they talk to themselves. And I ask, whose voice is that?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
And like, someone might initially say, oh, that's my voice. Like, but no, whose voice is that? Where did you learn that? Yeah. And it's almost always our parents.
It's one of your parents. Or both of your parents, depending on how that dynamic was
because
done.
most parents, they're acting in their unconscious nature as well. Yeah.
And their voice came from their parents. Exactly. And then they shall hammer it down on you. And somebody has to break the damn cycle.
Trauma is passed from generation to generation until someone's brave enough to feel it.
And then you feel it, and then you can actually heal it backward and forward.
Because there is no time.
Yes. And that is some other beautiful work that you do. But we're running out of time. But Ani, what's coming up for you? Where can people find you? What do you have on your grand agenda of domination? Which is a hilarious word for me to use.
So you can find me. My website is animanian.com, ANIMANIAN. On Instagram, ani.manian. I also have a podcast where I produce a lot of
It's really
free
good.
content to help people. It's called You Are Limitless. Just search You Are Limitless anywhere you listen to podcasts. Give it a listen. It's really a work of love. I want to help as many people as I can to come into the state of, being in love with themselves and enjoying life and living with this full expression, the full embodiment of who they are. So, if that's something you're interested in, definitely check out the podcast. It's free. I just share from my heart. And if there's something that you'd like me to talk about, just shoot me a message. And, just know that whoever you are, wherever you are, however you feel about yourself and your life right now, there is another place that is available to you. And that place has so much more hope, so much more joy, so much more happiness, so much more love, so much more acceptance. And that place is right underneath where you are. It's not away from you. It's not at arm's length or, a year away or 10 years away. It's right underneath where you are. It's underneath that layer of emotions that you've been unwilling to feel. Yeah. It's underneath all those things about yourself that you've been unwilling to accept. And the journey is not out here, it's down here. And if you can just go on that journey, I promise you, you will find the riches of the world. You'll find the riches of the universe down there. It's the biggest trove of treasure you will ever, ever, ever find. And it's a really fun adventure.
Isn't he awesome? That's why we hang out. He also just has a beautiful voice, so you could put his podcast on and go to sleep with it. Everybody is obsessed with his voice. All right, guys. We'll see you next week. Bye.